reopening may bring with it some new opportunities for workers. There's a new survey that shows that about a quarter of all workers actually plan to look for a job at a different company once the pandemic subsides. That is an incredible turn in the labor market from just a year ago. Joining us right now to talk more about it is Krithika Veragor, the at-work columnist for the Wall Street Journal. And Krithika, it just feels like we are at a point where employees who have felt trapped for a year, who have been fed up, who have been asked to do more, are maybe saying, okay, I've had enough. What are you hearing?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people want to switch jobs for the first time in a year. The survey mentioned, of course, a quarter. A Microsoft report from last month said over 40% of people want to leave their jobs this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with the huge levels of burnout as people's job descriptions just expanded and expanded during the pandemic. And it's not just frontline workers, although a lot of teachers and doctors and nurses experienced this head on, but all kinds of white collar workers, they just couldn't say no, and their workday got longer and longer. One study said in the early weeks of the pandemic, it became 8% longer within the span of like a month or two. And a lot of people think the only way to fix that state of affairs is to jump ship altogether.
Do employers realize this or understand this? Because I'm sure a lot of them think, hey, we've done what we could for our employees, especially white-collar employees who we let stay home for the last year. We took care of them during the pandemic. Would they be surprised by news like this?
I think employers are getting a bit nervous for the first time. It definitely was an employer's market for so much of the past year. If anyone got a job offer last year, they knew how lucky they were to get it. There was very little room to push back. And now I think they're getting a little jittery because of this churn that's coming up in the workplace. I think the pandemic showed how important benefits are to a lot of workers, both health insurance and things like flexibility when you need to take care of your family or keep the remote work going. So I think a parallel trend we're going to see as people start to jump ship and interview at other places is that even though employers really want people to get office, they're going to be forced to allow a little bit more flexibility if they want to keep workers on board.
I mean, when you start talking about numbers like 25% of employees thinking that they're going to leave, or 40% of employees, like that Microsoft survey that you cited, is that realistic? Do people actually follow through with things like that? Because it's really difficult to think of 25% or more of the workforce turning over. And by the way, these would just be people who are going to the other companies. You're not talking about, you're talking about every company having to deal with something like that. Is that realistic to even assume? What's a normal turnover rate?
Well, I think a poll is a goal, and I think these are coming at a moment in time when vaccines are really hitting Americans. So there's a sense of changing jobs. Don't think all of these new jobs that have been created last March, about a million jobs were at the U.S. economy. They're not all going to go to switching jobs. It's still a little bit of stickiness involved there. And keep in mind that young people suffered the most from job losses during the pandemic, so they will be filling a lot of those vacancies. Youth unemployment remains much higher than the average. For people 20 to 24, it's still upwards of 10%. And it's even higher for Black and Latino people of that age. So I think all of these job vacancies, because hiring has rebounded a lot, they're not all going to go to job switchers. I think a lot of the young people, like millennials and Gen Zers in the workforce, are going to take some of them as well.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.